Question number 15 of the Summa Theologica has to do with ideas. And I wanted to tell you, first of all, that I have provided a link down in the description box of this video in case you want to access the Summa Theologica online for free. I don't know if you're following along and reading these as we go along. I'd highly recommend you do that because I think it will be a way to supplement the information that I'm able to give during these videos. So, all right, so if you have followed the first 14 questions as we talk about God, you know that God in his simplicity is. And that means that as we learned in Perfection of God, all the perfections of the created world pre-exist in God. And that's a very key term, pre-existence, which means, as we learned last question about God's knowledge, is that God and the object in some sense are synonymous because God has all the ideas of things in his mind, so to speak. And so when we talk about ideas, for example, let's talk about the idea of a mouse. Okay, for us, we think we have an idea of a mouse in our mind, but with God as the creator and the first cause, the whole idea of the mouse pre-exists in him, right? The perfection of the mouse, the archetype, or as Thomas is going to call it, the exemplar of the mouse exists in him. And the cool thing about this is that now you can make that connection, as I've been talking about quite a bit, between our experience of the created world and coming to know God. This is very, very fundamental in learning about St. Thomas Aquinas. So and it's interesting that ideas are in the treatise on God. Okay, you might think, well, this is my idea. I have an idea of a mouse, or I got an idea yesterday. Okay, but they all participate in God because God is existence, right? So only 3 articles in this question, which is a big difference from the previous 3 questions, which were huge, right? And so this one is relatively easy, and the video should be a lot shorter. First one is whether there are ideas. Now, we know there are ideas because we have ideas. And he said, it is necessary to suppose ideas in the divine mind. Remember, this is the treatise on God, right? So this is all really about God. For the Greek word idea in Latin is forma, all right? There we go, forma, form and matter, all right? The thing that makes something what it is the form, the matter is the material aspect. Hence, by ideas are understood the forms of things existing apart from the things themselves. Now, the form of anything existing apart from the thing itself can be for one of 2 ends, either to be the type of that which it is called the form, okay, so the mouse form, is what gives the mouse its mouseness, right? And that's, okay, so that's the first one. Or to be the principle of the knowledge of that thing, inasmuch as the forms of things knowable are said to be in him who knows them. All right. So as I mentioned on the previous video, the things that we know are in us, and most especially they are in God because they pre-exist in him because he created them, right? So all these forms or ideas are in him first. And in either case, we must suppose ideas in the mind of God, okay? Now, he gives a great example here. And thus, the likeness of a house pre-exists in the mind of the builder. And this may be called the idea of the house, since the builder intends to build his house like the form conceived in his mind. All right, so the architect has a house in his mind, and then it goes and it's built. All right, what pre-existed in his mind before it was built. Great comparison, very easy to understand. And then the world was not made by chance, but by God acting by his intellect, as will appear later. Okay, so he's foreshadowing something. There must exist in the divine mind a form to the likeness of which the world was made. So the key here is all the forms, all the ideas, all the things in the natural world pre-exist in the mind of God. Okay, so the article number 2 just says, are there a lot of ideas? Are there, or just one? It must necessarily be held that ideas are many. Now, the highest good existing in things is the good of the order of the universe, as the philosopher Aristotle says. Therefore, the order of the universe is properly intended by God. Now, there cannot be an idea of any whole unless particular ideas are had of those parts of which the whole is made, just as a builder cannot conceive of a house unless he has the idea of each of its parts. So again, he's going back to the whole comparison of a house. The builder has the house in his mind, but there's the door and the shingles and the frame and all these different parts. The foundation is part of the house, but he has the idea of the whole thing in his mind, but also the individual parts as well. So then it must needs be that in the divine mind there are proper ideas of all things. Augustine says that each thing was created by God according to the idea proper to it, which it follows that the divine mind ideas are many. Okay, now it is not repugnant to the simplicity of the divine mind that it understand many things, though it would be repugnant to his simplicity were his understanding to be formed by a plurality of images. All right, so it's... And again, as God is existence, God is his essence, it's all in an eternal now with God. Remember his eternity. He doesn't have to think of all these different things individually like we do. His mind, remember, he doesn't think discursively. It's all together at one time because of his simplicity. But every creature has its own proper species, according to which it participates in some degree in likeness to the divine essence. So far, therefore, as God knows his essence as capable of such imitation by any creature, he knows it as the particular type in the idea of that creature. So again, as we mentioned before, there is autonomy. The creatures are their own, but God has knowledge of all these things and ideas in the forms of all, even particular things, right? All right, so then Article 3, whether they're ideas of all things that God knows. Yes, as ideas according to Plato are principles of the knowledge of things and of their generation, an idea has this twofold office. As it exists in the mind of God, so far as the idea is the principle of the making of things, it may be called an exemplar and belongs to practical knowledge. Okay, remember, speculative is the contemplation of truth. Practical knowledge has to do with operations, the things in the changing, mutable world. But so far as it is a principle of knowledge, it is properly called a type and may belong to speculative knowledge as well. So he's going to say that in God's mind, the way that God knows things, it's speculative, it's a contemplation of truth. He knows all things and an eternal now. Remember the definition of eternity. But then at the same time, he also is aware of all the individual ideas and things and particulars in the world as well. I hope this makes sense. The key is there are ideas. We know there are ideas, right? But have you ever made the connection between the ideas in your head, the ideas that you have of things like mice and grasshoppers and people, and the fact that all those things pre-exist in the mind of God? And as we're going to learn tomorrow, the truth of these things is in God as well. And so how do we know if something is true or false? Well, that's going to be the subject matter of the next 2 videos. And that's what, interestingly, in the Treatise on God, St. Thomas Aquinas wants to talk about truth and falsity. And those will be the next 2. Thanks for watching. St. Thomas Aquinas, pray for us.